Hi, guys, and welcome to Keep Hope Alive podcast. We have another great show for you today. We are here with Whitney Jones. Hi, Whitney. She is
Hi.
the founder and CEO of the Raymond K. Jones Foundation. She has a journey and a story that is going to be insightful to you guys. We're going to be talking about the families that are impacted by gun violence. And this is a topic that I'm glad we have on the show right now
Yes.
because there needs to be awareness on it. But going through the grief loss and the forgiving part. So we're going to tackle that in just a little bit. But Whitney, I have a question for you really quick. How many
Yes.
weddings have you been to in the last, let's say, 20 years or 15?
I 10 or 15 years. I would say probably two weddings.
Two weddings. Okay.
Yes.
So when you go into a wedding ceremony,
Mhm.
you have to sign something saying you were there. What is that something?
I believe it's the guest book.
Yay, yes.
Yeah.
I always ask that because I had one person on my show go, "Your life away?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good answer." But it was for the guests. They're not signing their life away, but
Right.
one of yeah, I know, right? One of our biggest sponsors here is lifeonrecord.com. Instead of having a guest book, they do a vintage rotary phone. So when your guests come in, they can pick up the phone and leave a message for you. You got 1 minute or 5 minutes or even 30. But if it's a wedding,
Wow.
yeah, no 30 minutes yet. You can do that on another call. So they make it very easy with this rotary phone. Right next to it is a QR code that your guests can take out their own mobile device and scan that too, and just be on the phone
Wow.
before or even after the wedding and leave you a message. Congratulations. We're so happy you're such a beautiful couple. Or, dude, it's about time you put that ring on her finger. They're funny. And I call it the gift of voice because that's really what it comes down to. So,
Exactly.
once they collect all those messages, they're going to burn it on a 12-inch vinyl record, or you can get their keepsake speaker, which I call the little boom box in most of my episodes.
Oh, nice.
But it's just amazing. So, like, if you're out there, celebrating your 1 year anniversary, you can listen to those voices while eating the top layer of your cake, that you're supposed to save,
Nice.
but just hearing it again. And, you get to keep this phone number, not the phone, but the phone number for 1 year. And their plans start at
Okay.
$99, which is
Wow.
amazing. So,
Impressive.
I mean, for me, I'm like, I never pulled out my guest book to look at it a year after, but would I pull out a record? Oh, yeah. I want to sit back
Absolutely.
and hear everybody talking, But not only weddings, you can use this for holiday, corporate events, children's birthdays, or even like a funeral. I've talked about that before.
Wow.
And, hearing the memories shared. It's just amazing. So, for more information about them, visit them at www.lifeonrecord.com. All right. So, Whitney, I'm just going to come
Yes.
out and say it for you.
Let's see. Well, first off, I'm a mom. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Her name is Brooklyn. Um, I work as a medical lab scientist by day. So, yes, I am a bit of a science nerd. Shout out to all the science majors out there. And then I also do run a nonprofit organization, the Raymond K. Jones Foundation. And a little bit about what we do, we provide support and resources to families who have been impacted by gun violence. So, one of our biggest programs is our bereavement assistant program. We also have a grant program, and then just recently we added a grief support program that's available now.
Good.
So, yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
All right. Well, what state are you in?
I'm in Indiana.
Indiana. Awesome. I
Yes.
love it. I used to hear all the stories. My friend lived out there, It's so cold every winter. It's so cold. I hate this.
Oh,
I'm bundled up and we have the fireplace going and I can't even get warm. And I was just
I
like,
know.
God, I'm in Texas. I don't think I could do with the winters out there.
Yes, I think we just actually got snow last night, and what's so crazy is next week it'll be, like, in the 40s or the 50s. So that's kinda how our weather fluctuates.
Yeah, we were like, oh, what was it, 20s? Yeah,
Oh,
and it said it's going up to the 60s this week. And I'm
oh
like,
my
and then dropping
goodness.
back down. I mean, yeah, everybody's getting sick because of the weather. Like, we call it in Texas the bipolar weather, so you never know what you're gonna get.
Yes.
But I'm gonna tell you, us Texas people, we see one little flurry come down. Everybody races to the grocery store, buys the toilet paper, the paper towels, the bread's gone. Like, oh my gosh, everybody fill up your tank. But
Oh my
the one,
goodness.
I think it was 2 years ago, I just wanted an ice scraper, like for my car. Everybody sold out. And I'm like, dude,
Oh
I was
my
like, I don't know what to do now.
goodness.
But it was
How
like
often how
places
often do you
all
guys get
over.
snow?
Not a lot.
Not a
I
lot?
don't
Okay.
know. No, it's like we'll get one major little we had flurries. I mean, not even flurries. It was less than an inch. And,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
of course, my son's like, I'm gonna get bundled up and just play with what's out there. And I'm like, okay, be careful.
Okay.
So, but I'm from New Jersey and I only lived there till the age of 6.
Mhm.
But I mean, the blizzards we would get and building that little fort and going in there, those were good memories. But I think about
Right.
it in my adult body, would I go out there? Mm-mm, no way. So I give you credit for living out there in the snow.
Yes.
Well, of course, with this foundation and everything, like kind of backtrack. What made you get into this? I know you went to school, you're the science person and everything, but what led you over to that? Was there something in your life that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually take you back to July 20th, 1998. I was only 9 years old at the time. And I remember my mom woke me and my brother up. It was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And she told us that it was an emergency and that we needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. So I vividly remember driving on the highway. I remember it was pouring down rain that morning. And we finally arrive at the hospital and we're greeted by a doctor and a chaplain. And they probably talked to my mom all of 30, 45 seconds, and then they immediately took her into a separate room. And I found out later that at that time, she was identifying my father's body. He had already passed away at that point due to multiple gunshot wounds, and they were just basically having her positively identify him. And I just remember her coming out of that room and she gave me this look, that motherly look of, how am I going to tell my two children that their father is gone? And she didn't show any immediate emotion. And it wasn't until we got back home where she finally broke down and she sat me and my brother down to explain what had happened. And the last memory that I have of that night is me and my mom and my brother literally crying ourselves to sleep. And I feel like that was probably the first pivotal moment of my life where I feel like losing my dad, my best friend, and literally a piece of me. So fast forward 20 years after his death, God placed it in my spirit to forgive the woman that took his life. And at that time, she was still incarcerated. So we started talking via letters initially, and then we eventually set up a date and time for us to meet at the prison. So we're going to fast forward to that actual day.
Yep.
Me, my mom, and her childhood friend had met there. And I would just say, after that meeting, I was able to get the much needed closure that I needed. I remember leaving the prison, and my mom asked me, she said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "I feel so much lighter." I feel like 10 to 20 pounds had just been lifted off of my shoulders.
Oh,
And I
wow.
would have to say that was probably the second pivotal moment in my life where I feel like my pain had turned into purpose. And I say that because the entire drive back home, it was probably an hour and 30-minute drive, different ideas started to hit my spirit as far as what I could do to honor my father, but that could also help other families who were impacted by the same thing. So that's what where the idea started for me to start this nonprofit. We were able to launch March 2020, and we pretty much been up and running ever since then.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
See,
I know
God
that's a
works
lot.
in different ways. Now you're helping everybody. And you know
Ex-
what? Your father is looking at you going, I'm so proud of you and everything
Yes.
you accomplish. I can feel that in my heart about your journey and everything. But yeah, hearing that kind of news when you're so young and your
Yes.
mom having to tell you that, that's the hardest thing. I mean, yeah, I'd be sitting with my two kids just on the couch, just holding them tight, and everybody get the cry out and grieve
Yeah,
together. So
exactly.
that's a huge loss that you've been through. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, it's kind of like I was going to ask you what inspired you to start the organization, but I
Yeah.
think that's truly what it was, right?
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah. So, let's see. So, what are some steps for people who struggle with the loss of someone to go through?
Well, I would definitely recommend joining a grief support group or program, whether that's in person, virtually. I feel like it's very important to be around other people to know that you're not alone. Grief
Yeah.
typically isolates people, and that's the worst thing that you can ever do. The biggest thing is to get some type of support system to be around you, whether it's family, friends, or for some people, it's complete strangers. So being able to be in that space and know that I have the support of other people that's also going through the same thing that I'm currently going through. But the biggest takeaway is to don't stop, don't let it stop you from living. Do not let grief stop you from living because a lot of people grief affects people differently. I
Yeah.
know sometimes we lose those monumental people in our lives that it's just a little bit harder to get out of bed every day just with coping with that. So, will it be hard? Yes, absolutely. But does it get easier? Yes, it does.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, yeah, the grief, I mean, that will sit in also. But, as you said, I've talked to other people on my show and they focus on grief loss and how to get through it too. And, it seems like it could take years and you're
Yeah.
always going to have that memory. But would you say the forgiving part, I mean, you said it took weight off. Has it lessened for you? Or, I mean, are you still in that much pain every day? When would you say from the time it happened
Mhm.
and doing the organization and building it, has that weight also helped you come to a lower level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 20 years after his death was when I really started the healing journey.
Yeah,
And so for 20 years, I feel like I did hold on to anger, resentment, and bitterness. And I think it's because I experienced that at such a young age. I didn't know really what grief was. And grief support really wasn't common back in 1998. Not to say that it
yeah,
didn't exist, but it wasn't as common as it is today. And so I would say that definitely took a load off of me. And I think that really ignited that healing for me. And so now, yeah, I still get sad, like when memories come on my Facebook of me and my dad when I was younger, those memories
yeah,
always hit you in the throat. It gives you that knot. But I'm handling it way better than I was growing up. So I would think forgiveness
yeah.
definitely played a big part in that.
So I'm just going to ask some extra questions because I'm interested
Yeah.
to know,
Yeah.
like when people write into the foundation, do you meet with them in person or do the Zoom? How do you go about going through there? And one more question on top of that, I want to know
Yeah.
because I put myself in your shoes. It's like, do people hold back also. Like they're just not ready to talk about it and they're keeping it bottled up inside of them. And maybe they haven't had this good cry to let it out, you know? Um, so yeah, those are the two questions. I know they were combined a little bit, but yeah, if you can help me go through that, I would love to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah, absolutely. So one of our biggest programs that we've been able to assist families is our bereavement assistant program. So it's like a financial assistance program that helps families cover those funeral expenses or any unexpected bills that they get as soon as that person is like immediately stripped from their life. So typically, families will reach out to us and they will give us a breakdown of what happened, what are their needs, and then typically, our organization can have a check issued to them within 48 hours. Because
Hmm.
I know how the funeral process can go. Some people need money immediately. So I
Yep.
know the urgency that it has with needing that financial assistance. And typically, I do like to meet the families in person. So I don't like to just send the money via Cash App or Zelle. I want to personally meet you in person. I want to give you that hug and know that you have our support. And here is some financial assistance to help you get through these hard times.
Yeah.
So typically, for our bereavement assistance, I do like to meet with the families. And then since we just launched our grief support program, we actually had our first in-person session last weekend. And we're actually going to host it virtually today just due to the weather. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can say the first session, I noticed that a lot of people are really at having a hard time with grief. It
Oh yeah.
depends on the level. There's different levels of grief. You have people that experienced it 6 months ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So there's different levels as far as grief, and we had a wide range of those levels in our sessions. And sometimes people are going to shut down. There was a lady
Oh yeah.
who didn't know how to process her feelings. She was like, "I'm just here. I'm just here for the support. If I just have to sit here and listen, I'm okay with that." You know, and the big thing is not to force people. We know grief takes time. It took me probably 20 years to
Yeah.
really allow that to be released from me. So it takes time. There's no
Yeah.
pressure. So that's probably the biggest thing I would have to say on that.
Yeah. So you mentioned you like to meet them in person. Have you ever actually traveled to go meet
No,
them in a different? No? Okay.
no, not as of yet. Most of the families we have helped live here in Indiana, so
Okay.
I've been able to commute within the area. But eventually, you know, who knows? You know, the
Yeah.
sky is the limit. We want to be able to impact as many families as possible, and that's
Yeah.
ultimately the goal.
Got you. Yeah. Because I was like, well, what if somebody in California needed you?
Right,
Like, are you gonna hop on a plane and just fly out there, you know? Or, I mean,
right.
days you drive, but it'd be a long drive.
Yeah, anything's possible. I'm not putting any limits on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad you have that foundation for everybody to go to and everything. What is the website for there?
It is www.rkjfoundation.org.
Good. Okay, perfect. Because I want our listeners to have that to reach out to you also. So,
Absolutely.
I can only imagine, I want to dive back a little bit to your younger self. And I
Yeah.
mean, the emotions that what were all the emotions you felt after learning that your dad was shot?
The first emotion was definitely anger, because I asked the question why for years. You know,
Yes.
why did my dad have to be impacted? Why did my family have to deal with this, you know, this tragedy and this stress? So I asked why for years, for years, for years. And I would say anger was probably the biggest thing, resentment and bitterness. And it was all
Yeah.
towards the woman that actually took his life. I know my mom, probably when I was in my teens, my mom had let me know that she had reached out to her and wanted to build that communication with us. And
Mhm.
I remember telling her, absolutely not. I'm not in a
Yeah.
place that I'm ready. And if I don't ever have to see or talk to her, I'm fine with that. And that's at the place that I was in, just in my teens.
Yeah.
And eventually, over time, as you begin to heal and you kind of get closure, then your mind starts opening up. Okay, maybe I can speak to her. Maybe I can get some of these questions answered that I
Yeah.
always had growing up. So
Hmm.
then the curiosity starts to spark once you've been through that healing process. So that's how it was for me. But pretty much I
Yeah.
would say the biggest emotions was anger, was resentment and bitterness for a good 20 years.
Wow. And that's a long time to hold on to that.
That
Yeah.
is a long time. Yes.
Oh boy. Yeah. So, I mean, going through school, I mean, did you see a counselor also to kind of help you sort through all your feelings and everything?
No, I really didn't. I think I made everything look good on the outside, and then I held a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff on the inside. Like
Gotcha.
seeing the 15-year-old Whitney, you wouldn't be able to tell that I was angry, I was resentful, I was bitter. You wouldn't be able to tell it. I put on this facade that everything was okay. I was just another girl who lost her father at a young age. When people would ask me questions, I was like, oh, yeah, he died when I was 9 years old, but I'm okay. And I don't even think my family knew how much I was holding all that in. Because at 9 years old, you really don't know what to do. All you can do is hold it in and just kind of numb that pain and that grief, and you just hold it in, and it's just bottled in, like just inside. And I feel like I did that, and I never showed any of those emotions outside of that. And was it healthy? Probably not. If my
Yeah.
family knew, if my family knew what I was going through, it probably would have helped growing up, getting that help and getting that support and that counseling. Because maybe it wouldn't have took 20 years to get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. So, I
Yeah.
mean, what advice would you give a parent right now? Like, continue, even though you talked about it. I mean, I would talk more to my kids about it too and let them express. Like, I feel like let's talk about fear, anger,
Yeah.
grief, and you just be open and tell. Is that kind of like what you tell somebody who's been through that? You got through the initial part of it, they know it happened, but I see, to me, I would worry about my kids. Like, what are they holding on to? Let it out. Don't hold on to it at all. Get it out so the healing process can always go through. So, you need to
Yeah.
do a children's book
Oh, yes, that
for
is a good
kids holding on to.
idea.
That would be a good thing to do. So,
That's a
yeah,
that's a good idea, honestly, because like I stated before, people experience death in different ways. So,
yeah,
like, if you have a family that experiences death, usually people worry about themselves in that moment, and they're not really worried about, oh, how's my daughter, how's my son going to deal with all
yeah,
this? Because you're dealing with it yourself. And it's like
yeah,
until you get up to a place of healing, then you might be able to help others. But that's probably the tricky part about death is being able to consider yourself and those around you as well. And make sure you
exactly.
all get the help at the same time that you know is going to be needed to be able to, confidently move through life and know that we can navigate this. We can navigate grief. We can tackle this.
Yeah.
Again, will it be hard? Yes, but it does get easier over time.
That's always good to know. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
just going to be a time thing and accepting and
Yes,
analyzing. I gotta say analyzing because that's what I would do. It's
exactly.
just there's so much to take on for anybody at such a young age and growing up. I mean, I know I'd be thinking about my father if that happens, every day but also, everybody has a journey in life and yeah, your question why? Well, why did he have to go now? Those are things you need to like find out and get some kind of closure on, or it just lingers and lingers. But I'm glad you had that weight come off of you. So, what other steps for people who struggle with extending forgiveness, what are the main struggles of that?
I would say, and this is just going off of my own personal experience, I feel like these steps really helped me. That first part is definitely acceptance, accepting what has happened, and just know that there's nothing that you can do to go back and change what has happened. I feel like that's really going to open that door for the healing process to start. And then where you eventually go to is that second step is, like we mentioned, getting that much needed closure that you need. And that can look different for anybody, whether it's somebody has done you wrong. You might express to them, hey, this is what you did, and this is how it made me feel. That might be closure for somebody.
Mhm.
Or you can write somebody a letter and keep it to yourself. That might be closure for somebody else. But getting that much needed closure is definitely necessary, and you deserve it. You definitely
Mhm.
deserve it. And
Yeah,
ultimately, what that's going to do is going to restore your peace, it's going to restore your joy, and it's going to restore your purpose. And if we turn it back on what I went through losing my dad in my teens, I finally had accepted what had happened. I knew that there was nothing in the world that could bring him back. And that started the healing journey for me. And then it
yeah,
led to the point where the closure piece came in. I wanted to know more about what happened to him that night. What were the events that led up to him being killed? And being able to meet the woman in prison that was responsible for that and getting those questions answered was the much needed closure that I needed. So, like I stated, when I left that prison, that weight that I mentioned, that was all that anger, that resentment and bitterness that I had held for 20 years and didn't even realize it. And it
yeah,
automatically was released off of my shoulders. So I believe that's really why I'm sitting here today, to be able to share my story and be able to assist other families who were impacted by the same thing. So that's why it's very crucial to
mm,
take those steps in order to conquer unforgiveness.
yeah, definitely. So, I mean, just with the foundation and running it. So, how many years has it been open, this foundation?
It would be 4 years in March.
Wow.
Yes, time
And
flies.
I'm just kind of curious. I mean, with the gun violence, I mean, is it like a certain percentage? I mean, that
I
happens?
Yeah, honestly, in my specific area, I would consider us in a gun violence epidemic. It's increasing. The new gun laws is probably not making it any better, but we've seen, like, I mean, it seems like every week someone's getting killed. And my first thought, it always goes back to the families, because those
Yeah.
are the people that's left to pick up the pieces once that person is gone. And being the families, being to and me experiencing that on my own and with my family, I always feel for them. That, oh, and are we able to help everybody? No, it just kind of depends. A lot of people hear from us through word of mouth. We've personally reached out to families that we see on the news and try to extend
Yeah.
our help. But other than that, we wish that we can help everybody, but it's just so broad, and it's getting out of control that it's like all we can do is help who we can at the moment.
Yeah, and that's very important. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Like maybe people wouldn't realize this was really around or something. And, you know, I wish that, for the hospitals, they would give a brochure out, like contact
Exactly.
these people. How it,
Yeah.
do you do that?
Well, actually, thank you, Nadine. That gave me an idea because I actually we just started like trying to partner with funeral homes. And we've been
Yeah,
able to give them our brochures, but I never even thought about hospitals as well being another support group that can help
yeah.
families get through that. So thank you. I will
You
definitely.
see, like for me, I have health issues, and they always ask if I have a will, and I go, well, not yet, because they always ask, and I'm like, well, can't I write my will on a piece of notebook paper? To have to go and spend all this, I don't know when I'm going to go. So it's just like, what can I do? and they said it would be legal or something. They would honor that. And I was
Wow.
like, "Okay, yeah, I never knew that." It was something new that I learned being there, but, you know, I was asked I thought I had a TIA, which was a stroke, and I still will do these podcasts and my mouth feels crooked to me or my eye, and, my doctor goes, "Well, that's you're critiquing yourself because you're on the camera," and I'm like, "No, I see it, like, this is it." So, I mean, I was like, "How do I fix this?" But, when I was there, they, of course, admitted me to have me observed and watched and the MRIs. Like, no, there was no stroke, but they were going through the steps like it was. And they
Wow.
asked me if I needed a chaplain. Then they had somebody come in and go, "Do you need any information on this? Where to go? We can provide all that for you." So it got me thinking, if they're doing that with health stuff, when that doctor comes in and says, "I'm sorry, he's passed or she's passed," come and sit with, I wish it was a counselor or something at the hospital that could talk to you and give you all that stuff. So to make it easier, because I think it's right then in that moment. Yeah, it's shock, it's denial, it's grief,
Yes.
yeah, it's the word why, but instead of having your head just kinda explode in all of these different ways, it's like, hand out this information and make you the next step to have that talk, you know?
Absolutely.
I know they do something, down here for people who are trying to harm themselves. You have a counselor. It's free. You call 988. Just talk it out and make it easier, and they're going to hold no judgment. But, you know,
That's
I would, I want you to do that. I want you to go to some hospitals and see if they'll do that and everything.
I
So,
think that is an amazing idea because that
yeah,
if you think about it, that's where it all started for me. Being that 9-year-old walking through the lobby and seeing my mom be taken into a room by a doctor and a chaplain. I mean, I think that is when we're gonna need the most support,
yes,
even if it's just given to us as options. Hey, when you're in a space that you're ready, take a look through these brochures and see if any of these organizations can help you out in any areas of your life. And I think that would have been extremely crucial. Um,
yeah, I mean, for me, I would keep that. Usually I throw brochures away, no, no, no. But if it's something I know I'm gonna need and I want to look into at that moment, I'll make a
gee,
file folder and keep it there and say, okay, take time to look at this and take that first step to call them and see, I think school counselors should also kind of be on the lookout, because when you go back to school, you may be triggered with something and then it's going to be like, okay, I actually need to talk about this, I
exactly.
don't want the other kids to see me crying or anything. And then,
Mhm.
um, you guys have meetup.com. I think it's worldwide, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so even having a group, you don't have to be active and have events all the time there, but people are on meetup.com putting that in there looking for a group they can go to right away. So
Right.
that may be another avenue too for you guys to also
Yeah.
bring that awareness and stuff. And if you ever do a podcast, I think it would be very beneficial for you guys, because you could talk about so many different subjects and still hit that wide range. So,
Exactly.
I mean, here we are sitting in 2024, and I know last year I was like, podcast, for me, I don't know. And then it just took off, and I was like, this is great because I feel like I'm helping, different people be heard with their stories and everything. I was just doing audio at first, and some of my sponsors are like, no, we want to have you on YouTube. And I'm like, what? Like, I can't be in my pajamas, and you know what? I got to a point, who cares if I'm in my pajamas doing a talk?
Exactly.
You know, it's me. I don't have anything to hide. This is the real true self coming out. But,
Exactly.
all of this, and I think, I just hit 100 episodes. You're my 101.
Oh,
Keep that in mind. That's a good
congratulations.
number. You're my 101. This is a good
Yes.
episode. So,
I love to
but
hear that.
definitely, I mean, forgiving is very hard for people. And I mean, going to visit, I bet your heart was racing.
I mean, every type of emotion that a person can have, I had on that day. And
Yeah,
I just remember going in and I'm like, what have I done? Am I really here right now? And I think
yeah,
the minute she came out and greeted us and we just embraced her and showed her nothing but love, that's when my calmness just went, okay, we're here, we did this, being able to put a face to a name because I had never known what she looked like. All I knew was her name. So to be able to finally put a face to the person that literally changed the trajectory of my life.
yes,
And um, it was very powerful. If I had to sum up the visit in one word, it was powerful
powerful.
because I really think if I would have never made that decision to go and extend that forgiveness to her, I know for a fact the nonprofit wouldn't have been created and I probably wouldn't even be here sharing my story. To me, I would just be another woman that lost her dad at a young age and never really spoke about it. I think that's exactly the place I would have been in.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm glad you're not. So, I mean,
Exactly.
you put it into action. So, but yeah, I mean, people who are debating that, I mean, it could be gunshots or something else that the
Yeah,
person's in jail for. I think there was a TV show that actually came on, and people were being filmed going in to talk to these inmates who hurt and impacted the families, and they were looking for forgiveness. I forgot the name of the show, but I watched a few of them,
I
but I
so
don't see it on
familiar.
TV anymore for some reason. But I was like, I don't know if I would have the guts to even do that. I feel like, it'd be so many different emotions because when you talked about anger, like I
Yeah,
know that one would come out if I were there because I have to express what it did to me in my life and how it
yeah,
impacted my life, and just to be able to say why to a person, that is
yes,
all people need to hear is why did it happen? You know,
exactly.
it's kind of like, I just something did happen to me, and my question is why? And then my next question is, I need $5,000 in the check, because you ruined my life, basically,
Yeah,
and I'm gonna have to do some hurdles. But you know,
exactly.
whatever closure you can get and find to help process, it's gonna be good. I know we talked about books and podcasts and different
Yes,
avenues and stuff, but I want our listeners to know, even though you're in Indiana in the cold, you can still
yes,
Zoom her. You can still leave a message to reach out to her. So we here at Keep Hope Alive have a phone number, 833 and 780 HOPE, and they can call, they can leave a message or their story and journey and get that with you. It gets passed. And then if you want to call them back or do a
yes.
quick little podcast, Zoom, meeting with them, you guys can reach out. So I will definitely be checking my messages for those and sending
That's
them off
awesome.
if there's any. So I want to thank Life on Record for that phone number too, because that is amazing. That's why it's there, is to help other people. So definitely. I think I did ask all the questions. It's just a matter of how those steps were and how to get through. And yeah, I wanted to dig a little deeper with you because,
Yeah,
from everywhere to see them and to creating this foundation. And it's in the honor. Your dad's name was Raymond, right?
yes,
So, yeah, the Raymond K. Jones Foundation. Let me ask one more. So,
yeah,
when people go through things with gun violence or something else, and they want to bring awareness to, if they already see there's a foundation just like yours, but they wanna still add and contribute to somebody, uh, do you help them at all with that? Like
Yeah,
going,
absolutely.
"Good,
We've had
okay,
families that we've helped through our bereavement assistant program, after they had a chance to meet me in person and see that I'm just this likable, warm person, they always want to get to know me more. And they'll
okay,
ask me, what can I do past this point to help you in any way that I can, whether that's volunteering for any events that you have coming up. And so we're going to actually try to get more better at that this year is creating that volunteer list. Anybody who wants to help out, it may not necessarily be start their own nonprofit, but they may just want to contribute in some kind of way. Contributing your time is probably the biggest thing that you can ever do to help us, whether it's coming to our back to school event and handing out backpacks, or if we decide to take a tour of a school or prison to be able to pass out brochures, you're more than welcome to come with us. So I do want to open that door for anyone who wants to be a part of the organization or who wants to help spread the awareness of gun violence. Those are the ways that you can definitely do that.
I'm just wondering out of the blue, I mean, somebody's in prison. Are they teaching them what they did wrong and learning? And, I do they give a heads up to the inmates saying they actually want to come and visit you? You know, I know they have Bibles, I think, at prisons and
Mhm.
everything, and there's different things that they can do, but to look on their end of having to go through this and say, "Okay, this is real too," because I feel like they're
Yes,
nervous and scared too. And when they step through that door, I mean, I wonder if anybody's ever told them, no regrets, something mean. I
yeah,
just don't know. I mean, maybe they don't, and they have more of a negative energy and don't want to see that person. Have you
yeah,
ever heard of stories like that? Like, or are they truly owning up to what they did, did to the
yeah.
family and sincere? So,
And I'm glad that you actually brought that point up because that's one of the biggest things we want to do through my organization. We eventually do want to go into these prisons and like share our story. And I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but after the woman was released from prison, she actually reconnected with me and she's now a part of my organization. She's one of my board members. So me
wow.
and her actually worked side by side and eventually, with her being previously incarcerated, we thought this might
Mhm.
be a good program for us to partner together and say, let's go into these prisons. She has that lingo to be able to reach those inmates. And then I have like the family perspective of
Yeah,
like how it all affected me. So that's our goal is to start going
yeah,
into these prisons and just
that's good.
share our story. Yeah, you'd be surprised how somebody's life can change just by sharing your story. So
Yeah, definitely,
that's
definitely.
the
And
goal.
yeah, very true, very true. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing to talk and hear
Yes.
your journey and your story and what you're doing and everything. I hope I covered everything.
Yes, I think you
So,
covered it all. So thank you so much for having me.
yeah. And I will also want to give a shout out. Thank you to our other sponsors that we have for this show. Of course, I talked about lifeonrecord.com, your interactive guest book. We also have they're new, Ogden Ventures LLC. His name is Marquise Ogden. He is a retired NFL football player, and I think he was like on 3 teams and everything.
Oh,
But
wow.
he is now a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and a podcast host. So we're very excited to have him in our family. I keep hope alive. Our next one is, oh, and you know what? His website is marquiseogden.com. And Marquise is Marquees, and a last name Ogden. So you can look up his information. Our next one is bridalshowsinc.com. If you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area or just want to travel to Dallas and have a big party, check them out. Like there's 5 events, I believe, out of the year. I know they're doing a trade show at the end of January at the Dallas Market Hall for their bridal show. But you'll meet tons of vendors out there. They're showcasing their work, get to know them, and maybe prices, who knows? But they have fashion shows and everything. So they make it worth the trip to come out and everything. Our
Yes.
next one is Miles and smilesevents.com. Deborah Rose. She's amazing. Of course, I have to say that her background is in investigations, but she is in the event industry. She is a handwriting analysis and lipstick reader, and she's accurate. 100% accurate, and I love it. And she kind of creates as she goes different ideas in these events to make it really fun when you hire her. So our next one is Bryce Harney. It's www.brycemagic.com. I guess you can guess what he does. He's traveling all over the United States right now doing magic, and he's a mind mentalist reader. And
Wow.
he's just amazing. So he's been on a few TV shows, I believe, for his magic and everything. But if you need somebody to do that magic show, he is the guy to go to. Our next one is richmondpunch.net. He is a violinist. He's been doing it for over, I want to say, without age, because I've known him for a long time, over 30 years probably. And with that being said, he graduated from the Juilliards and he has performed before in front of 1 million people. And also, he had Lifetime show. I think 2 of them hired him to be the background violinist. So
Wow.
that's an accomplishment. Now he did move and he is coming back to Dallas, but he does travel also with his work. So you got to check out his information. And then our last one is TK Hair Salon. If you need something's on my lips. You see, I told you there's bloopers during the show. I was like, what is that? So if you need your hair done and you're going to be in Plano, Texas area, or just want to travel to Plano, Texas, check them out, tkhairsalon.com. They do men's, women's, children, updos, coloring, perms, facial, whatever you're needing, check them out. So wherever you guys find your podcast, you'll be able to find Keep Hope Alive. We, like I said, I mentioned your 101 episode. So I just got the
Yay.
notice yesterday that we are 100 episodes in. And just to know, I started the end of April and how fast this has
Wow.
grown. I am so happy.
Oh my
So
goodness. Well,
we're getting the word out.
congratulations.
Yes, I'm so excited because it feels like we're helping people out there. And I
Yeah.
love it. So spread the word, be a guest. If you have a story, contact me. It's Nadine at keephopealivepodcast.com. But as we're going into the podcast, I call it the season breakers. We're coming up on Valentine's Day. I want to hear proposal stories. I want to hear your love story. So, like, call 833-780-HOPE and leave that story. You have up to 30 minutes to talk. So, and we'll share those on one of our shows as we get closer to Valentine's. But I want to thank you, Winnie, for coming on to the show. It was a true delight to learn all this informative information, and you're a joy to talk to.
Oh,
And
thank
I just
you.
want to say thank you, thank you.
Well,
So
thank you,
until our
Nadine.
next, oh, thank you. So until our next show, love and light, everybody, mwah, and have a great week ahead of you. Bye bye.